Greetings and salutations. Happy Wednesday. Today, I want to talk about grad school and how I'm paying for it. Now, you may be wondering, who is this chick who's talking to me on my little rectangle here? So, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Laura, and here on my channel, I talk all things about becoming your favorite self. I use the terminology favorite self instead of best self or highest self because I think that those terms imply a certain objective measure of perfection that I don't think is true, nor do I think is helpful. Instead, I like to use the word favorite because I think it's more helpful to tap into our own personal values and strengths and get a little bit further away from the values that society prescribes upon us. So, today, in keeping with that theme, we're going to talk about finances and education. So, I am currently a master's student in my second of 6 semesters, earning my master's of science in counseling. I'm going to be a therapist by the end of all of this. And yeah, I'm going to talk about how I am paying for my higher education degree. Before we dive into the details of how I am planning to pay for school without loans, I do want to talk a bit about privilege. I know, not a super fun or sexy topic to talk about, but the truth is, there is a lot of privilege at play in my ability to pay for school without taking out loans. And the reason why I want to talk about this before talking about the details of how I'm doing this is because I can imagine that if you are in a different position in life than I am and you're watching this, that you might feel some feelings. You might watch my video and say, that's not possible for me. And I just want to acknowledge that you're probably right. You're probably right. If you watch this video and you're like, gee, must be nice. Yeah, it is nice. And you're not a bad person or some kind of failure if you're not able to do your own education the same way that I am. I don't want you leaving this video feeling like a failure or feeling like your future is hopeless because I'm able to do this debt free if you aren't. So, I mean, besides being a middle class white lady, I'm also able bodied. I am also cisgender. I already have a bachelor's degree, which is already paid off as well. I'm going into this endeavor with no student debt. I was able to get into grad school on my first try, which is also huge. A lot of people are not able to do that. I live at home with my parents, and so my living expenses are very low. I don't have kids or a spouse or a house of my own that I'm paying for. My monthly expenses are very low, which is in large part because of all of these different external factors, a number of them being completely outside of my control or choice. And they just happen to work in my favor. Like I said, just putting all of that up front so that if you're watching this and you start feeling bad about yourself, know that I'm only able to do this because there are a lot of ways in which luck just happened for me that it might not happen for you. And that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you stupid. It doesn't make you behind in life. Trust me, I'm 33 and I live with my parents. I'm in no position to judge where you are in life. And therefore, I don't want you to judge where you are in life either. Okay. We don't control the hand we're dealt. All we can do is play it to the best of our ability. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about the ways that I will be graduating with my master's debt free. The first and probably biggest factor of all of this is where I decided to go to school. I am attending a master's program at a state university, which means that I am paying state resident public tuition as opposed to private institution tuition. There is a huge difference. If I were paying full sticker price, I would be paying, I want to say, about $9,000 per year, $10,000 per year, which is a steal, especially because the program that I'm in is not a research program. A lot of people who are in grad programs get funded through grants and stuff because they're doing research for the university that they're attending. But when you're in a master's program or other higher ed program that is considered a professional program that gets you a license, um, such as people like me who are in therapist programs, physical therapist programs, occupational therapist programs, lawyers, all of, business admin people. All of these degrees don't tend to come with some kind of like subsidy or grant or other kinds of financial aid, because there's sort of this expectation of, well, you're getting this degree so that you can earn more. And you are not here to spend your entire career in academia, whereas people who are going into the research side of things often do intend to spend their career in academia. All of that to say, counseling programs, therapist programs, social worker programs are often very expensive, and there's often not a lot of ways to get away with paying less than the sticker price. So, with that in mind, I am attending the cheapest program that I could find. I did have to make some trade offs for that. The biggest one being that my program is 3 years long instead of 2 years. Most programs that are comparable in my area are 2 year long programs because they don't take summers off. My program does take summers off, and that means that it's a whole additional year before I'll be able to graduate and go on to get my supervised hours for licensure. But I kind of decided that that trade off was worth it because it would mean that my education would be so much more affordable. But also, taking summers off means that I can work more over the summer to cash flow the already much cheaper tuition. You see what I'm saying? So, the cost in and of itself is a huge, huge factor of why I'm going to be able to do this. Now, I will say there was one other trade off besides the length of the program, which is the competitiveness of the program. With this program being so affordable, as you can imagine, it was quite competitive. I want to say that my program accepts about 20% of the applicants that they receive. When I went to the interview day, it was packed. And it is truly only a fraction of those students actually in the program. And I was extremely, well, I won't say lucky that I got in, because I did put a lot of work into preparing my application to be as strong as possible. But if I hadn't been able to get into this competitive of a program, I would be paying considerably more money, or potentially taking another year and trying again to apply. When it comes to time, this is a little bit of a tangent here. When it comes to timelines, because I think a lot of people get impatient when it comes to education. They kind of want to like get it over with. And I can't blame anybody for having that mindset. I definitely fall into that mindset from time to time. Um, but my thought process that I have had to intentionally work on with becoming a counselor and going back to school has been, this is a long term path that I am voluntarily entering. I am switching careers into this new trajectory, and I intend to be here for a long time. I took a really long time to think about this and weigh the pros and cons of making this career shift. And so I'm sort of like, if it takes me an extra year or two to finish my degree, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of time. So, yeah, that mindset has actually served me really well, because part of the preparations that I did for applying to grad school was actually doing a semester of community college. I have a pretty strong resume. I'm a very strong writer as well. So, being able to explain how my work experience was relevant to this degree program was pretty easy for me. But looking at my application through the eyes of an admissions officer, I see somebody who is very self aware, has a lot of interesting work experience that is applicable to the field, and somebody who did well in undergrad 10 years ago. Can this person still do school successfully, having been out of it for so long? So, uh, Given that I felt like that was the biggest weakness of my application, I decided to take another year before applying to programs so that I could go do a semester of community college, also do some volunteer experience with working for a crisis line, so that I could really like get my feet wet with going back to school, going into the field of helping people in crisis, and just really be sure that this is a path that I want to take, and also have some more recent proof that yes, I can still do school. This isn't going to be a big risk on their graduation rates, et cetera, et cetera. Preparation and being patient, I think, were keys to me being able to get into this highly competitive, much cheaper program, which is going to ultimately enable me to graduate debt free. The second way that I will be graduating debt free is financial aid. So I know I just said in my last point that most programs that offer a professional degree don't offer financial aid, but mine does. I was actually really not expecting to get any kind of grant money because, again, the expectation that had been set for me was that was to expect to pay full price. So you can imagine my very pleasant surprise when I got my financial aid package from my school that said that I had a grant covering 90% of my tuition. So, is that right? A significant amount of my tuition. So much so that I am responsible for less than $1,000 per semester. That's crazy for a master's. Now, this money is need based, okay? I am getting this much money from the government to help me pay for school because I'm fucking poor. Because I am extremely low income, which works out for me. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I have very, very low living expenses. So bringing in not much money is okay because I don't have to send much money back out. Still in all, my FAFSA that I did indicated that I needed a lot of help with tuition, and they were right. I definitely do need help with tuition, but yeah, so federal grant money is paying for the vast majority of my education. That I do consider to be luck. The third way that I'm paying for tuition without any loans is that I opted for a schedule which would allow me to have summers off. This, I don't think I really emphasized it enough previously, which is why I want to come back to it. But the trade off of taking a longer on ramp into my career means that I have the luxury of time to accumulate money to cash flow my degree. I think that I still would be able to cash flow it if I didn't have the luxury of summers off, but it'll be a lot easier for me to cash flow my degree by having summers off. The fourth and final way that I will be graduating debt free with my master's is by crowdfunding the remaining financial responsibility that I do have. The out of pocket amount of money that I have to pay, I've gone to my community and said, hey, I'm pursuing this. If anybody has a little bit of spare cash they want to throw my way, here is my GoFundMe. Which, by the way, if you are watching this and for some reason want to support my educational endeavors, I'll put the GoFundMe in my video description. I would be ever so grateful for, a spare $5 that you might have if you have it. Obviously, do not light yourself on fire to keep me warm. At the beginning of the school year, I sort of impulsively decided, you know what, let me just make a GoFundMe, post on my Instagram, post on my Facebook, and just like see what happens. See if I can, get my community to pay for half of my semester's tuition and then I can pay the other half or whatever. As it so happened, I raised more than enough for my first semester in less than 24 hours with family, friends, people that I haven't talked to in years, somebody who I haven't talked to since high school. And mind you, I'm 33. Somebody that I haven't talked to since high school threw $100 at my fundraiser. That was 10% of my semester's tuition. So it's definitely worth a try. yeah, I was like really surprised and frankly quite humbled and honored that uh, people from my past who I haven't talked to in years were willing to support this career change. It really was a cool experience to feel so supported, and was just further proof to me that I'm on the right track with this career change. So, those are the four key components of my plan to graduating debt free. Having very low living expenses so that I can throw a lot of money at my tuition, more money than another person who has a higher cost of living would be able to spend. Choosing a cheap school, being lucky enough to receive financial aid, uh, saving money over the summer to pay during the school year, and finally asking my community for help. Now, of course, life can happen with the new political administration that we have here in the United States. Federal help for my education is not guaranteed for the next 2 years, and I recognize that. Crowdfunding from people is also not guaranteed. So, with those things in mind, I do have a backup plan. Pretty much, there is a program here in California that pays student loans for people in social sciences, psychologists, social workers, therapists, counselors, if you commit 2 to 3 years of full time work to specific high need sites that are identified by the state government. Certainly not ideal working conditions. We're talking about community mental health, which nobody really wants to work in community mental health. But my thought process is I'm gonna have to get those supervised hours anyway in order to be eligible for licensure. And you are allowed to kind of double dip. So you can go and work at one of those sites as an associate, earn your pre license hours, while also earning hours towards qualifying for these loan repayment programs. And so I figure, worst case scenario, I do one of those programs, work at one of those sites for the 2 to 3 years it's going to take me to be eligible for licensure with my supervised hours. And then once I've fulfilled my obligation to the loan repayment program and fulfilled my obligation to my licensing hours, I will at least be able to go into my licensure debt free. That I feel 100% confident I can do. Even if I'm not 100% confident I can graduate debt free, I feel maybe like 90% confident I can do that. I have a backup plan in the event of the unexpected. Also, just wanted to put that out there because it is always a good idea to have a backup plan. I feel like I've been talking long enough. Let me know if this video was helpful, if it gave you some ideas for how you might be able to graduate debt free with your degree. I do think that it is a really important thing to think about early on when you are deciding to go to school, go back to school, that you have to remember that this is, at the end of the day, a financial decision that you're making. Personally, I think that higher education is really only worth it financially if it's something that you have to do in order to enter the field that you want to enter. In my case, it is a requirement, which is why I'm doing it. If it were not a requirement, I would find a way to not do it. With that in mind, it did make sense for me financially to do it. I can see that there's going to be a return on investment, and pretty quickly, like within a few years, I'll be able to see the return on my investment. If it were more murky, I would think very carefully about whether or not it's worth it. And I already thought very carefully about making this career change and going back to school. It was not a decision that I took lightly, and you shouldn't either. As awesome as it would be for higher education to be more accessible so that people can kind of do it recreationally almost. If that's what you want to do, that is what community colleges are for. Love community college. Okay, I've done several semesters of community college. It is awesome. And if you don't know what you want to do, and therefore don't know if the path that you're going to take requires a degree, put in the minimal financial investment that you can. That's what I'm doing, even with this degree program. I'm still putting in the minimal financial investment that I can so that the return on my investment can be optimized. There you have it. That's how I am planning to graduate debt free with my master's, class of 2027. Um, Leave a comment. Let me know if this was helpful. If you have any questions, if this plan will work for you, let me know. If this plan won't work for you, let me know. If you're doing something similar, let me know. If you're doing something totally different, let me know. Whatever it is, I'd love to hear from you. And next week, next Wednesday, I am planning to talk more about what it's like to be a grad student and how I prepared for my grad admissions in order to be able to get in on the first try. So, if that interests you, or if you're otherwise interested in what I have to say about becoming your favorite self, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, all of the algorithm things. And I will talk to you on Sunday for my small channel statistics update. See you then. There's a squirrel outside of my window. It was sitting very funny. um, what was I saying?